Oh, hello out there. I don't know if anyone's listening. We're fixing to find out, as they say. Days here, after midnight, little off the cuff Broncos conversation. I wanted to try something new here. There's a lot of Broncos chatter out there, but maybe slow it down a little bit. A little something befitting the overnight hours, perhaps, the late night hours. So I'm going to try something new from time to time this year. And that's what Denver football after dark is going to be. Not sure if it's going to be every day, just kind of when I have time for it. But we'll start off here talking about contracts and talking about that of Nik Bonitto in particular. I'll let the music breathe for a little bit. Nik Bonitto, of course, talked with media on Sunday at his charity event. He was out at Columbine High School in Littleton. And there, befitting the after dark vibe, low light here in the studio. And Bonitto, of course, he's pretty happy. He's coming off his best season, and he's seen the contracts for other edge rushers, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett. And he knows he's not getting those types of deals, but that does set the market. But he knows he's getting a good deal. He knows that probably $25 million, if he were to hit the market's the floor. That's kind of the way it is. If Brian Burns, he's worth north of $25 million. Nik Bonitto coming off a 13.5 sack season, coming off of being second team All-Pro and looking poised to have an even better season, perhaps. He knows if he can build off that, he's probably going to get more than that on the market. The contracts aren't going down, but of course, there are other factors involved with that. Number one is you've got other deals involved. You don't just, of course, have Pat Surtain. You don't just, of course, have Nik Bonitto. You got Zach Allen. You got Zach Allen's contract expiring. And with Zach Allen, here's somebody who had actually more quarterback hits than Nik Bonitto. Bonitto had more sacks. Zach Allen had 40 quarterback hits. And the significance of that number is 40 quarterback hits is a total that only one other interior defensive lineman has hit in the last 7 years, and that's Aaron Donald all the way back in 2018. So he's in some exclusive company. Frankly, he probably should have been first team All-Pro last year. Second team All-Pro doesn't really do Zach Allen justice. Zach Allen deserves more as well. Now, the interesting thing on Zach Allen, even if the Broncos don't bring him back, he's actually going to count against their salary cap next year. That's a little consequence of one of the accounting tricks that they do with void years. Now, something the Broncos have done with a few of their players on multi-year contracts, specifically second contracts in recent years, is they've reduced the immediate hit by putting what they call void years on the end of the deal. So you can spread out the signing bonus further by tacking what they call void years on the end of the deal. So you take Zach Allen, for example. He signs a 3-year contract back in 2023. The Broncos stick another 3 years on it. They're void years. They're basically dummy years. Like, he's not under contract for those 3 years, 26, 27, and 28. But with that, they can take the signing bonus of, as it ended up being, and some of it is you kind of convert some of the contract into bonus, and then you can kind of extend it out. The signing bonus ends up being $29.125 million. You create these void years, and you can then spread out the hit. So because of that, with Zach Allen, $12.225 million of his contract that he's on right now does not actually hit accounting wise until 26, 27, and 28. Now, if Zach Allen is a Denver Bronco in 2026, if whether it's on, whatever path he is, whether it's a tag or he's signed to an extension, then the part of that contract that'll hit the prorated portion of the signing bonus would be $6.575 million, and then 2.825 in 27, then another 2.825 in 28, unless of course they do further conversion of it. There's a lot more they can do because there's plenty of tricks that they can do. There's, the salary cap, it's a hard cap, but there are a lot of methods to maximize that. And if you want to go for an example, just check out the New Orleans Saints and how they somehow managed to stay compliant year after year. Now, if Zach Allen is not a Denver Bronco in 2026, the Broncos will have a $12.225 million dead money hit on Zach Allen, because that's going to be, everything accelerates. The 3 void years will accelerate next year. So the Broncos are going to owe Zach Allen money, at least on the cap. They're not going to owe him cash, but he's going to count on their cap no matter what next year. That's actually something to think about when you're talking about his deal, when you're talking about where he's going to stack up, that he's going to count for something even if he's not on the team. The Broncos have the option of tagging Zach Allen. That's actually something to consider. If they tag Zach Allen, the projection according to Over the Cap is $26.535 million. If they tag Nik Bonitto, $27.4747 million. The interesting thing on that amount for Nik Bonitto, that would put him in the range of the top 7 edge rushers if they tagged him. It's probably what he would expect to make. It's right around the floor of where he would be. Now, here's an interesting thought for Nik Bonitto and the Broncos. There's not a deal done right now. As Nik Bonitto said, hey, it could be tomorrow. It could be months from now. I think last year when Quinn Miners got done before camp, it maybe put a little bit of a false expectation in some circles, some fan circles perhaps, about these things getting done early. Maybe a more realistic timetable is the type of timetable we saw for Pat Surtain, which of course was late August, end of preseason, not long before the regular season, or Jonathan Cooper, early November, Garrett Bowles, December. I don't think Nik Bonitto not being done now is anything to be concerned about. But another thing to think about with Nik Bonitto, of course, is the fact that he plays a position where there's some depth. If you're the Broncos, do you consider waiting when you have Jonah Ellis, when you have D'Andrea Tillman coming off of an efficient season, even when you have Q Robinson, the 4th-round pick, who flashed during OTAs? You don't want to put the eggs in one basket. And certainly with Q Robinson, it's still a projection. You haven't seen him in pads yet. So I want to caution that. There was a lot of reason to be excited about Q Robinson based on what we saw in OTAs, in minicamp. When I was watching him out there, all I'm doing with you out there is telling you what I see. And I think that's true for the other reporters out there as well. But Q Robinson was wrecking things. But let's see what happens when the pads go on. That's going to tell the tale. I mean, I've been at this a long time. I remember back in 2003, a wide receiver, late round pick named Adrian Medice, who stole the show. I even think that Peter King mentioned him in one of his write-ups because he came out to Broncos mini camp in May and said he was a future star. And Adrian Medice is one of those names who's, aside from people like me, is long since forgotten, right? So that's why maybe you at this point you say, okay, let's wait and see. You want to turn the page, you're excited, but let's wait and see. The difference between Q Robinson and Dondrea Tillman is Dondrea Tillman has done it. He was a top 20 edge rusher in sack rate last year on a per pass rush basis. He, of course, had that work in garbage time against Tampa Bay, but then built on that. His play was as much responsible for the decision to trade Baron Browning as what Nik Bonitto did, because they were confident in the depth. If they weren't confident in the depth of Tillman and Jonah Ellis, they wouldn't have dealt Baron Browning at midseason. And there was, of course, out there, I know there were some howls of outrage. Oh, you're trading Baron Browning. It sends a bad signal. Why are you trading a guy who can help? Well, you did that because you could get a draft pick and because you had a couple of young guys, rookies, who were pretty good. You were confident in them, and they proved they could do just fine as rotational edges. So George Payton mentioned back in Palm Beach at the league meetings that, hey, Jonah Ellis might be able to take the next step. We'll see. He was out for OTA's minicamp, just starting to work his way back because, of course, he had surgery after he was injured in Buffalo in the playoffs. Now we'll get a chance to find out more about where Jonah Ellis stands. Jonah Ellis, what he did gave a chance for that injury, Jonah Ellis's injury gave a chance for Q Robinson and Dondrea Tillman to do a little more in the offseason, and it was an opportunity they ran with. Appreciate some comments rolling in. Harold says, OBT after dark. Well, no, this is actually my thing here. So you're not seeing it on the Denver Sports channel. So it's actually on my YouTube channel, and it's on my Twitter as well. So this is actually something I'm doing as a little bit of an experiment. So I've got a YouTube channel at Mace Denver, and I put some things on there. Like I put the Nik Bonitto offsite press conference on Sunday on there. I put some of my pieces on there. What I do is I throw things on there that don't necessarily fit in the algorithm of what we're doing at Denver Sports, because at Denver Sports, we want things to kind of fit into specific boxes lengthwise and keyword wise. Whereas on my channel, I'm just kind of doing whatever. So that's why I'm doing this. And so actually, I said, hey, I'm gonna kind of do some experimenting over here. I know our OBT after dark, it's really hit. And as Harold said, minus Cecil. Yeah, with Cecil, the OBT after dark is hit. And I like the vibe, and I'm a night owl anyway. My mind kind of works best and processes best. And another thing that I was thinking is I was just, when I was having my downtime over the last month, I had a lot of time to think. I even watched some other shows, not just in the Broncos sphere, but elsewhere, because I follow other sports. I follow I follow baseball teams closely. I follow the Braves. I, of course, get out to the Rockies games as much as I can. I keep tabs on things like University of North Carolina basketball. I'm been a lifelong Tar Heel fan. So I, follow content from there. People know I'm a big Manchester City supporter. Atlanta Braves as well. So I'm watching things, but then I had some long drives. People may know I took a little baseball road trip. And I just start thinking, I kind of get some ideas, things, what do I want to do? Ideas I want to explore, and sort of hit me. Okay, what is something I can do that's maybe different, that doesn't add much in terms of work and preparation, that maybe can, be something I want to explore? And also, what's different in terms of in Broncos country? Like, I didn't want to do a show that was like anything out there. I mean, there's a lot of chatter in the Broncos sphere, but it's a lot of it is kind of up tempo, rat-a-tat-tat. So I'm kind of zagging when everyone's zigging. Or is it zigging when everyone's zagging? I thought, all right, there's a lot of high energy shows out there, hype shows. I'm going to do something that's a little bit more low key. Roger says, watching from Mexico. Keep up the good work. Appreciate you, Roger. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for watching on YouTube. So I guess he had the notifications turned on, perhaps. Roger or Brent says, hello from Vegas. Broncos fan before the Raiders got here. Love your insight. Enjoy listening to. Well, thank you, Brent. Appreciate you checking in from Vegas, where it's still, I guess it's still Monday there. You're in the Pacific time zone. One of many Broncos fans in Vegas, as we see every year when the Broncos go out there. Looking forward to being back out there again later this season. Vegas, I was a bit cool on Vegas when the Broncos started going there. It's starting to grow on me a little bit. I think part of it is I'm starting to kind of get into a vibe and get to where I've found some places. I'll never be into gambling. I mean, it's just not my thing. I know some are. That's great. Good. Whatever floats your boat. But I'm not, this is another thing that anything I do, and I'm glad Cecil's with me on this on Orange and Blue today. Anything I do is never going to focus on gambling. I don't care about parlays, don't care about point spreads, don't care about any of that. But Vegas has a lot of great restaurants, I've found a couple of them. Great restaurants that stay open late. And that's another thing. I'm a night owl. One of the aspects of life that has changed post-pandemic is that places don't stay open as late as they used to, and that stinks. Because there used to be a great many options for restaurants that were open and their kitchens were serving meals at 10:30, 11 p.m. at night. Not so many anymore, unless you go to New York, unless you go to Vegas. And that's one thing I like. Chris Thomason of the Denver Gazette and we find some spots. There was one place we hit after the game last year, a place that was like a Vietnamese, Asian type of place. We got there at like 10 o'clock at night, Sunday night. It was packed. Terrific. It was one of those places. It was like a couple of miles off the strip in one of those strip malls. I'd have to look up the name of it, but it was fantastic. And there's a lot of places like that in Vegas, and so I've sort of learned to embrace that. Roger, Broncos have many good outside linebackers. We need a good third inside linebacker. Yeah, the funny thing is, Roger, the fact that you have a third inside backer with as much starting experience as Justin Sternad is actually pretty good. Even though we did see late in the season how what he is as a player kind of caught up to the Broncos, although there were other factors involved. As we know now, PJ Locke was playing hurt. I don't think the struggles on the back end against the run when things got past the defensive line, I don't think it was just on Sternad. Cody Barton, not great against the run. That's always been a weakness of his. We knew that when the Broncos signed him. Stronger in coverage than against the run. I think we talked about that. That proved to come to fruition. PJ Locke struggling with injury. So you think about the back two levels in the core of the defense, the inside backers and the safeties. Once Singleton went down, so you had Sternad, who his strength is coverage going all the way back to Wake Forest. Not against the run, not sturdy. We remember back in 2021 when he was asked to go out there against Cleveland, the Dearness Johnson game. I mean, he struggled then. And then you look back against the run last year, you look at his work, for example, against Indianapolis, it wasn't great. So you had a couple of guys, an inside linebacker whose strength was coverage, not work against the run. And then you go to safety, and one of your safeties is playing injured in PJ Locke. So that's your four guys in the core, the spine of the defense, the back two levels, and really only one of them is optimal against the run, and that's Brandon Jones. And you see why there were problems down the stretch against the run. And then, of course, when you've got Riley Moss injured, and then when he comes back, he's playing hurt. And then that's making things easier against the pass. That's why things unraveled a bit. So Sternad is a good backup, not necessarily who you want as a starter. But what you hope is that Drew Sanders steps up. A lot of athleticism there, a lot of potential. And now the Broncos are going to turn the page with him as an inside linebacker. This is exciting because it's really what they wanted him for initially, even though he has that dynamic ability as a pass rusher that we saw in spurts as a rookie. We saw it at Arkansas when he came out. But when they threw him out there at inside linebacker as rookie, he wasn't ready. Didn't really have the defense down pat, and it showed. That first month, he was one of the guys out there for the 70 burger in Miami. I mean, it was what it was. You know, you had a defense that was, you had him out there, you had Delarian Turner-Yell, you had, Josie Jewell out. I mean, Justin Simmons out. It was a mess, personnel-wise. Guys that weren't ready, weren't up to the task, and Miami made them pay. It's 2 years down the line. What you are then is not what you are now. There is growth. There is progress. It's never static. So let's see where Drew Sanders is now. Let's see what growth he has had. Let's see how well he knows the defense. A couple years to study. I mean, when he was rehabbing from that Achilles, he was studying that defense. He was in the playbook. He was getting it down. He had a chance this offseason to work with the ones alongside Justin Sternad while Dre Greenlaw and Alex Singleton worked their way back. So if he's stepped up enough, then maybe he's the first guy off the bench, and perhaps he brings a little bit more of a dynamic presence in there than Sternad could. So perhaps that's a little bit better. Bengals threw against Justin. He looked bad. Not good. Not great, Bob. Yeah. And that was another thing. Sternad's strength is in pass coverage, but he struggled there. It was, Mike Gesicki, ate him up. Ate up the Broncos that day. Sort of why, if the Broncos had gone, if the Broncos had been able to see Gesicki on the market, he would have been an intriguing option. But of course, the Bengals brought him back. As well, they should have. I think it made sense for the Bengals to bring him back. Brent Taylor, I do worry about tight end like you're discussing. If Evan Ingram misses 4 to 6 games, how different does our game plan become? Ooh, yeah. There isn't a ready-made option behind him. There really isn't. Caleb Lohner, he's an intriguing long-term guy. And I hope we'll look back on the last play of minicamp, the catch that he made, the one that had teammates going, ooh. Hope we'll look back on that as the start of something. But we don't know that yet. Right now, it's just kind of a cool moment and something that offers you a glimmer of hope long-term for him. But he's still a guy who had 4 catches, 4 touchdowns, but 4 catches last year. Again, when I saw his name pop up for the Broncos drafting him, was like, the basketball player? So he's got a long way to go. That, to me, that was the one disappointment of the draft for me. I don't grade drafts when they happen. I grade them years down the line. Cecil and I argue about this every year. He grades them. I don't. The one thing I thought the Broncos came up short on was getting a tight end who could have helped them. I think they would have liked to have gotten Harold Fannin, but he didn't fall to them. Jahdae Barron, when he dropped to 20, I suspect that changed their plan for the draft a bit. That you never know how it's going to go. You have to react to the board as it falls. And the Broncos did. You don't turn down that kind of talent at 20. Premium talent at a premium position. You had to take it. Made sense. And it's not like corner wasn't an area that needed addressing. You did need to add a corner at some point in the draft. He was sitting there. It was a very defensible pick. But I do think that if Barron had been taken a pick or two earlier and they had decided to move down, that perhaps you would have seen a tight end go somewhere earlier for the Broncos, maybe if they'd added a pick there in day 2. That's something to sort of think about. But the draft capital they had, the way the draft flowed, it didn't end up with them getting a tight end. I think they would have liked to. It just didn't happen. And because of that, right now, if something happens to Evan Engram, it changes the offense. There isn't a ready-made replacement for Evan Engram right now. I mean, really, it's probably one of the receivers, one of the young, bigger receivers who would take those snaps. And actually, Evan Engram in general might be taking receptions / targets. If you're looking for, okay, where's he getting those targets, those receptions from in terms of last year's lineup? He might be getting those receptions / targets from the receiving core last year. Like from, say, okay, the plays that went to Lil Jordan Humphrey, all of those plus some from others might be going to Evan Engram. So, I mean, that's actually something to think about. What pick would you change for a tight end? Well, let's say the Broncos trade down and you end up seeing some moves around, that kind of thing. For all we know, they may have had one more pick in there within, say, the first 120. If, Trader George gets in there and does his thing, perhaps you're looking at 5 picks inside the first 120. It's possible you're looking at maybe you're not getting a Savion Jones, for example, if you have the same number of picks. Maybe you're not getting a defensive end. Maybe you've taken a tight end and a defensive end comes later. It's just it's a butterfly effect thing. Your entire draft might be different. You might have a different. I mean, You might have a different running back. Who's to say? I mean, they liked RJ Harvey. I mean, but he wasn't the only back, right? So these are all things that sort of come into play. Now, when it got to about pick 45, pick 50, RJ became their target, their guy, and then it was okay. How much can we move down, get some extra draft capital, and still get him? Get some capital so we can get some more picks, so we can really kind of maximize our return here. So that's something interesting. Another thing that kind of comes into play is, let's say a tight end that they want. Let's say that tight end is there in the middle of the third round. When they take Pat Bryant, do they take a tight end instead of Pat Bryant? I mean, that's something to consider as well. Are they viewing kind of the tight ends and receivers in kind of one group? Like, okay, at some point we need to find a pass catcher out of this area, and not so much a tight end or receiver, someone who can just help us as a pass catcher. And then who is that? So that's something to consider. Roger mentioned Seattle cut Noah Fant. Yep, that was an interesting thing that happened over the weekend. Kind of puts a coda on the Russell Wilson trade. Seattle obviously still has some players, draft capital that they got out of the draft capital from the Broncos. But Fant being gone, certainly it's not the end of Noah Fant's career. In all likelihood, I think he certainly ends up somewhere else. But Noah Fant's career, I'll say, did not go the way I expected. I thought he would end up having a more dynamic career than he did. Actually, one of the advantages of doing a little bit slower show is I don't feel guilty about taking time to look up Noah Fant's numbers here as you see my laptop glow. Noah Fant, not a bad career, 3,300 yards to date, 15 touchdowns though, 15 touchdowns over 6 seasons. He's only had 1 touchdown in the last 2 years. That's a disappointment. When I watched him at Iowa, I thought this guy could be straight cash money as a red zone threat. And that really didn't happen. Look back on it, like his 3 most productive seasons were with the Broncos. He had his highest per catch average in 2019 with the Broncos. His 2 highest yardage seasons were his 3 highest yardage seasons were in order 21, 20, and 19, all with the Broncos. His 2 highest catch seasons, his 3 highest catch, or his 2 highest catch seasons with the Broncos, his 3 highest target seasons with the Broncos. The Broncos really did get the best out of Noah Fant. I know there was the accusation of, soft goes down on contact. I mean, you kind of wish he would have been able to fight through more, but he was he fought through some injuries as well. But it's weird to say, like a good and productive player, but I guess I just thought there'd be a bit more. Maybe I expected too much. I thought Noah Fant was going to be a superstar. I thought both he and TJ Hawkinson were going to be. I thought they could exchange all pros. I thought you might see Hawkinson being all pro one year and Fant being all pro the next year. I love both of them. Watching Iowa in 2018, I was bedazzled by both of those two. It was a treat. It was like, the proverbial kid in the candy store. I can't come up with a better cliche than that at this point, but just absolute treat watching them. Brent, new kickoff rules. How much higher do you think returns yards go up per game this year? Ooh, per game. I'd have to really dive into the numbers before I do a little math. I don't want to answer that one off the cuff because I'm not sure about that. I'd actually want to, sit down with, get the spreadsheets out and figure that one out before I put that one in there. But I think a decent amount. I'm curious. I'm curious about the averages. I'm also interested to see if there are teams with the Broncos and Marvin Mims Jr. that say, we'll take the 35. And that's actually something that I know Darren Rizzi, the special teams coordinator, has thought about. That if you have some good returns, not only from Marvin Mims Jr., but whoever gets put back there with him, could be Jaleel McLaughlin, for example. There are other possibilities as well. You keep hearing running back. The backup running or number 3 running back might be determined by which one ends up as a kickoff returner, because that skill set might suit the second guy back there perfectly. Jaleel, certainly his vision suits that potentially really well. And I still like getting the ball in his hands. The only thing with Jaleel is you just wish he could bounce off contact a little bit more. But if there's open space for him, he can maximize it. But the idea of maybe having 2 guys back there with that sort of speed, if you put it into kind of a pick your poison equation, there might be teams that look at that and say, well, I'll take the touchback in the 35. That's a win for the Broncos. 35-yard line is, a couple of 15-yard passes, and you're at a Will Lutz field goal. Win. You love that. You love that. Answer it with Cecil. I'll watch it. Oh, you know how Cecil loves special team shows. Cecil loves kicking shows. I might have to do that one here because I think that's something that's something that's more for me. Brent thought Noah's gonna be like Kelsey, Travis Kelsey. Yeah, I thought that's a good comp. They could have been like Kelsey. But Kelsey could block much better than Noah Fant. Noah Fant, never a great blocker, but shouldn't have been asked to do that. I remember back in 2019 when you had Noah Fant asked to go against, I believe it was Khalil Mack, when Khalil Mack was with the Bears. And I was like, what are you doing? What kind of plan is that? I mean, all due respect to Rick Scangarello, nice guy, but boy, there were some things that he did that were kind of mystifying in his year as offensive coordinator. The tight end around that just, that seemed to be called at the most inopportune times, opening play in Oakland or in Minnesota when you're falling apart, you're trying to hold on to a lead, you're trying to run some clock, and you just need the most reliable play to get a first down and chew up another 2 minutes of clock to save your defense, which has, your corner core is battered. You don't want to put them back on the field. And you run that. Oh, man. Ugh. I shouldn't get upset about it, but anyway. But yeah, asking Noah Fant to single up on Khalil Mack. No. That ain't it. See, a lot of this is not asking somebody to do something that is beyond their skill set and their talent. Good coaching is about molding what you do to the talents and gifts and capabilities of the players you have and being flexible. If you have If you have a team that doesn't have the personnel to do exactly what you want, you have to adapt. Now, Sean Payton hasn't been able to do exactly what he wanted offensively the last 2 years. He's adapted. He couldn't do what he wanted with Russell Wilson. He adapted to Russ to get what he could, to wring what he could out of him in that season. Russ statistically had a good 2023, much better than 2022. It was enough for Pittsburgh to sign him because Payton massaged it, molded it, altered it to suit the skill of the quarterback that he had. We saw him get more to his offense in 2024, but he still couldn't do everything because he didn't have the interior target at tight end. He didn't have a guy who could be a functional joker. Now he has Evan Engram, but as mentioned earlier, doesn't have a backup, so it's still kind of fragile. You're still relying upon that. Now, you should hopefully be able to get some dynamic pass catching out of your running back position. That's where RJ Harvey comes into play. More dynamic in space as a pass catcher at running back than Javonte Williams was. So perhaps there's some capability there as an interior target, even though he's smaller. But still, there is that fragility. You've got a 9-year veteran tight end coming off the season with 2 injuries. The Broncos, they are putting a lot on their methodology. This is another thing, and we'll probably discuss this more. They believe in the methodology of Bo Lowry and his staff. I asked Sean Payton about it as offseason work wrapped up, because they've been the least injured team in the league the last 2 years. They are really taking this for a spin, because you look at their big offseason additions: Talanoa Hufanga, ACL in 2023, injuries last year. Dre Greenlaw, Achilles. Evan Engram, injuries last year. And now J.K. Dobbins missed more games than he's played in his career. 4 huge veteran additions, and all have significant recent injury concerns. And then, of course, you got Alex Singleton coming back from a torn ACL. But those 4 additions all have significant injury concerns. In the cases of Greenlaw and Hufanga, they are available because of their injuries. If they were healthy, good chance they're still 49ers today. And the Broncos are banking on their training and nutrition methodologies getting better results. If they go 4 for 4, I mean, everyone's going to be studying what they do. If they go 2 for 4, that's probably a reasonable expectation, but then it's which 2? Because, for example, if it's 2 for 4 and one of the 2 who misses a lot of time for injury is, say, J.K. Dobbins, you probably can get by, because then it maybe becomes an RJ Harvey / Tyler Bidet, or RJ Harvey, Audric Estime. And if Estime can figure out how to protect the ball, and RJ Harvey, Audric Estime tandem can work. But let's say that you go 2 for 4 and it's Dre Greenlaw who doesn't hold up and Evan Engram who doesn't hold up, then maybe you're looking at problems. Hey, Armac, good to see you, man. Good to see you, mate. Good to see you coming over here. Roger Dry, no offense, says he was a better blocker than Greg Dulcich. Yeah. Greg Dulcich, man. We hardly knew ye. Are we watching the Giants with great interest? Not really, but they've got Greg Dulcich and they've got Lil Jordan Humphrey, and they have some other guy, quarterback. Armac, question: what are rookies doing with a few extra days before the vets report tomorrow? Kind of a combination of things. They may get in some on-field work, but this really allows you a chance to kind of onboard the rookies, get them up to speed. You do even some kind of off-field type stuff. You do seminars and things like that, but you get them in shape, get them more in their playbook, just underline a few things, get them more ready to go. Like teams would keep their rookies around a bit longer. Now they tend to do more tacking it on before training camp. This just gives them a chance to get their feet wet, get a lot of extra stuff in a more pressure-free environment. Obviously, because you don't have a lot of players in, there's not much you can do in terms of like full field type of work. But you can do conditioning, you can do weights, and you can do things, like you can do financial planning, for example. Get all these guys with some financial planners, get them acclimated to NFL life. That's, there are some NFL life skills that you have to work on. So it's as much about off-field stuff as it is on-field stuff that the rookies get out of this time. But of course, Tuesday morning, veterans get there. We will hear from some veteran players about 3:30 or so on or not 3:30. Maybe it's 3:30 Atlantic time or something like that. It's actually going to be or sometime in like Brazil or something like that. It's actually going to be 11:30 Mountain Time. We're going to hear from them. Don't know which players yet. I'm not even sure Broncos staff knows which players. I think it depends on which ones get in, which veterans come in and check in, and that will determine which ones we hear from. Super talented DBs. We do more nickel packages on early downs to confuse offenses. Depends how well they hold up against the run. I think that's a big thing. You don't want to sacrifice your run defense, and so that may depend on Jahdae Barron and how he plays the run. So if you can move him into the box, and certainly has that capability, that's where his first exposure to extensive playing time at Texas, being in that star position, which had him roving around and had him moving into the box and attacking the run. We know he has that sort of capability. So there are some things that you can do with him. The question then becomes, if you go nickel, are you going light on the defensive line or are you going light at linebacker? If you go light at linebacker, which linebacker comes off? If you go light at defensive line, which D lineman comes off? Because you love your defensive line. I mean, now, that being said, by the way, Sean Payton alluded to Nik Bonitto playing 85% of the snaps during OTA's minicamp. That wasn't Nik Bonitto. It was actually Zach Allen who played 85% of the snaps. Zach Allen played more snaps than any defensive lineman in the NFL. That's something Sean Payton wants to get down. So maybe you go more nickel and you get Zach Allen more rest and keep him fresher. I mean, to his credit, Zach Allen held up really well physically, but maybe you want to get him a little bit of downtime so he can be a little bit fresher. Yeah, it can be which linebacker comes out. You can do that. Certainly you can do that as well, but I think you also want to get Zach Allen some rest. Now, perhaps that can be getting another defensive lineman in there. Maybe Savion Jones is ready to play some more snaps. We'll see. Now, Savion Jones, roster-wise, probably means the bell is tolling for Eni Awazarike. That's the guy who, right now, if you're looking at the D-line Awazarike was D lineman 6 last year because Jordan Jackson was D lineman 5. If Savion Jones comes in and is one of your top 5, Jackson becomes D lineman 6 and Awazarike's out. Jackson, certainly, he's a plugger, good rotational guy. If Jones takes one of the top 5 spots from him, Jackson's not going to give it up without a fight. So Roger says, not Greenlaw coming off the field. Yeah, Greenlaw, if he's back to full strength, I don't think he's coming off the field. Now, that being said, who has the green dot matters as well. The green dot is usually the guy who stays on the field. Typically, your green dot is going to be a 100% snap guy. So that's something to watch for as well. Whoever has the green dot on their helmet is going to be a guy that stays in the game. Denver Football After Dark, debut edition of Denver Football After Dark. Appreciate the comments coming in. It sort of started off where I was talking about Nik Bonitto and his contract. And I had some clips, but the discussion went in a different direction. That's actually okay. I did want to play one comment from Nik Bonitto. I thought this was pretty interesting. It was actually in response to a question I asked. I asked him about how he added muscle last year and said, okay, you mentioned last year the muscle you mentioned that to me. So what was your point of emphasis this offseason? Here's what he had to say.
Just continue to, keep that weight, get stronger, more explosive, all those things, and definitely, just taking care of my body more. I feel like as the season went on, it was starting to, break down a little bit. So just making sure I'm taking care of my body and just refining pass rush skills and all that stuff.
So interesting there. He said his body broke down as the season went on. That's actually pretty interesting. Now, he played well. I mean, you think like in December, that includes the perfect read of the play against the Colts when he gets that touchdown that puts away the game. But I alluded to this earlier. The defense had a lot of things going wrong. We saw kind of how they were exposed. And I talked about the spine of the defense and where things were weak. Barton, Justin Sternak kind of being exposed against the run, in particular, PJ Locke being injured. But with Nik Bonitto, teams running at him as well. Nik Bonitto's always been better in the pass rush than against the run. Now, he's improved against the run in large part because he added strength and his technique has improved at setting the edge as well. He's gone from a guy that you couldn't have on the field in a base package as a rookie. I mean, you think back to, say, that Jacksonville game in London in 2022, and when he was out there, they just ran right at him and had gobs of yards when he was on the field. Again, like I said with Drew Sanders, you grow. Just because you're in one place as a rookie doesn't mean you're going to be there 2 years from now. You grow, you progress, you learn. He's better now than he was then, is Nik Bonitto. But he talks about his body breaking down. Of course, he adds weight last year, but if he says his body is breaking down a bit toward the end, he's not holding up as well against the run, and teams are having some success running at him in a way they weren't early in the season, which also is contributing to the issues against the run that the Broncos are having, and thus teams are able to chew the clock, stay on the field more, and then it ends up resulting in what we see in Buffalo, the end point of this, when the Bills are able to chew up the clock to a point where the Broncos lose the time of possession battle in a way that they hadn't lost it in over 41 years. That's how thoroughly they were dominated by the Bills. And that's a huge part of why they went defense for a lot of their big moves, why it was immediately Greenlaw, Fonga, why when Jahdae Barron fell, they didn't hesitate. Premium player, premium position, but also addressing an area of need, because when Riley Moss got hurt, they were in trouble. Not as much trouble when they put Chris Abrams-Drain out there instead of trying to rely on Levi Wallace, but still they were exposed in that month on the back end. So nearly an hour. I didn't expect to go this long. I was thinking this would be 16 minutes. I didn't know if I had this in me. Armac, appreciate your time. I appreciate you checking in. I mean, I had no clue what this was going to be. And I don't know if this is going to be 55 minutes every time. I don't know if I'm going to do this every day. It's going to be probably irregular. You know, like some of my pants. But it was fun to do. Training camp Eve energy. Yeah, maybe that's what it is. And there'll be training camp energy. There'll be things to say. Things to get off my chest. That's the thing. Sometimes I just have more to say. I've written a story. I want to expand a little bit. So appreciate you joining me. Great show, great interactions. Thank you, my good man. Thanks, Brent. Love you being here. Scott, peace out. Good show. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you coming on this. Appreciate all of you checking in on this debut edition of Denver Football After Dark. Your show, so no filter. Ha! No filter, but no cussing. Because this is another thing, and probably another reason why I'm doing it. I qualify for monetization on YouTube. Yay, me. So, but also, want to try something different. Let's, like I said, I got a little energetic there at the end, but let's try a different vibe here. So appreciate all of you for joining in here. Hopefully, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I appreciate you hitting that notification bell at Denver Sports. Hit the notification bell on Mace Denver as well, because I will be posting a lot of my training camp wraps. I post my post-game wraps there as well. I started doing that late last season. So there will be content at Mace Denver on YouTube as well as at Denver Sports. So just as it is at Denver Sports, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid, because I'll be doing stuff here as well as there. Appreciate you joining me here late night for this debut edition of Denver Football After Dark. And, I'll probably do this again tomorrow as well, because we're going to probably have plenty to talk about as we actually hear from some of the Denver Broncos as they report for training camp. So until next time, take care, and thanks for watching, everyone.